The horse's hooves thundered like cannon fire across the dusty main street of Monticello, Utah territory, and Isabella Jennings felt her grip on the reins slip further with each frantic stride. She had only meant to walk the mare to the water trough, but something had spooked the animal, something she never saw, and now death seemed certain as the buildings blurred past her, and the shouts of onlookers faded into a terrible rushing in her ears. Through her terror, she glimpsed a figure on horseback cutting across from a side street, moving with purpose and impossible speed. The rider was bent low over his mount's neck, his hat pulled tight, his entire body moving in perfect rhythm with his horse as he closed the distance. Isabella's fingers were numb, useless, and she felt herself sliding sideways in the saddle, the ground rushing up to meet her. Then strong arms wrapped around her waist, and she was lifted bodily from the runaway mare onto the stranger's horse. They moved together for several strides, and she felt the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the iron band of his arm holding her secure. He was calling to her horse in a low, steady voice, and incredibly, miraculously, the mare began to slow. Within moments, both horses stood still in the middle of the street, sides heaving, while Isabella tried to remember how to breathe. "Easy now," the man said, his voice rumbling through his chest into her back. "You're safe. I've got you." Isabella turned her head to look at her rescuer, and found herself staring into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. They were the color of the sky just before sunset on a clear day, startling against his sun-bronzed skin. Dark hair curled at the edges of his hat, and dust covered his clothes, but there was something inherently steady about him, something that made her believe she truly was safe. "You're my guardian angel," she breathed, the words escaping before she could think better of them. A slow smile transformed his face, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. "Just a cowboy, miss. Name's Isaiah Irving. Are you hurt?" "I don't think so." Isabella realized she was still pressed against him, his arm still wrapped protectively around her middle. Heat flooded her cheeks, but when she tried to shift away, her legs trembled so badly she feared she would fall. "I'm sorry, I seem to be shaking rather terribly." "Nothing to apologize for. That was a close call." Isaiah swung down from his horse with easy grace, then reached up to help her down. His hands were gentle but sure as he steadied her, keeping hold of her arms until he was certain she could stand. "Let's get you to the boardwalk. Your horse isn't going anywhere now." Indeed, the mare stood docilely where Isaiah had left her, looking for all the world as if she had never bolted in her life. A small crowd had gathered, and Isaiah guided Isabella through them with a protective hand on her elbow. Someone brought water, and she drank gratefully, though her hands still shook so badly that Isaiah had to help her hold the cup. "Miss Jennings." The voice belonged to Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house where Isabella had been staying since her arrival in Monticello 3 weeks prior. "Good heavens, child, you gave us all such a fright. When that horse took off with you, I thought surely we would be planning a funeral instead of a wedding." Isabella felt her cheeks grow warm again. "I'm quite all right, Mrs. Patterson, thanks to Mr. Irving's quick thinking and excellent horsemanship." "Irving?" Mrs. Patterson's sharp eyes fixed on Isaiah with new interest. "You're the one who bought the old McAllister ranch, aren't you? The one that's been working yourself near to death trying to get it running again?" "Yes, madam." Isaiah removed his hat, revealing more of those dark curls. Isabella found herself watching the way the afternoon sun caught in them. "The ranch needed considerable work when I took ownership last spring. And here you are, 6 months later, rescuing school teachers from runaway horses. Your mother would be proud, young man." Mrs. Patterson patted his arm with genuine warmth. "Now, Miss Jennings, let me get you back to the boarding house so you can rest. You've had quite the ordeal." "Actually," Isabella said, surprised by her own boldness, "I should thank Mr. Irving properly. He saved my life." Isaiah's blue eyes met hers, and something passed between them, something that made Isabella's breath catch in a way that had nothing to do with her recent fright. "No thanks necessary, Miss Jennings. Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Isabella pointed out. "You did. And please call me Isabella." "Then you must call me Isaiah." He smiled that transforming smile again, and Isabella felt something shift in her chest, as if her heart had decided to beat in a new pattern. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat meaningfully. "Well, perhaps Mr. Irving would like to join us for supper at the boarding house tonight. It's the least we can offer after such heroism." Isabella held her breath, hoping he would accept. Isaiah glanced at her, then back at Mrs. Patterson. "I'd be honored, madam. What time should I arrive?" 6 o'clock sharp. And do try to clean up a bit. I run a respectable establishment." But Mrs. Patterson's eyes twinkled, and Isaiah laughed, a rich sound that made Isabella want to hear it again and again. As Mrs. Patterson led her away, Isabella glanced back to see Isaiah collecting both horses. He caught her looking and touched the brim of his hat in farewell. She waved, then turned quickly before he could see how widely she was smiling. Back in her small room at the boarding house, Isabella changed out of her dusty dress with shaking hands that had nothing to do with the accident, and everything to do with the prospect of seeing Isaiah Irving again in just a few hours. She had come to Monticello to teach at the new schoolhouse, leaving behind her family's farm in Missouri and the young man her father had expected her to marry. She had wanted adventure, independence, a chance to make her own way in the world. She had not expected to meet someone like Isaiah Irving on her third week in town. "Stop being foolish," she told her reflection as she pinned up her hair. "He's just a kind man who happened to be in the right place at the right time. He probably rescues people every other Tuesday." But her reflection smiled back at her with unmistakable excitement, and she found herself taking extra care with her appearance, choosing her best dress, the green one that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. When Isaiah arrived at 6 o'clock precisely, freshly shaved and wearing clean clothes that revealed the broad shoulders and lean strength of a man who made his living through physical labor, Isabella's breath caught all over again. He brought flowers, wildflowers he must have picked on his way into town, and presented them to Mrs. Patterson with such genuine courtesy that the older woman blushed and fussed like a girl. "These are lovely, Mr. Irving. I'll put them in water right away. Miss Jennings, why don't you show our guests to the dining room? Supper will be ready momentarily." Left alone with Isaiah in the hallway, Isabella suddenly felt inexplicably shy. This morning she had never heard his name. This afternoon she had been held in his arms. Tonight she was standing here tongue-tied like a schoolgirl, which was ironic considering she was the schoolteacher. "You look well recovered from your ordeal," Isaiah said, his voice gentle. "No lingering tremors. Only when I think about what might have happened if you hadn't been there." Isabella led him to the dining room, grateful to have something to do with her hands. "That was truly remarkable riding, Isaiah. How did you manage to catch up so quickly? My horse is fast, and I saw which direction your mare was heading. I just intercepted at the right moment." He held out a chair for her and she sat, watching as he settled into the seat across from her. "What I'd like to know is what spooked your horse so badly. She seemed calm enough once I got hold of her reins." "I don't know. One moment we were walking peacefully, and the next she reared and bolted. I didn't see anything that might have frightened her, but perhaps I missed something. Maybe a snake or someone fired a gun nearby." Isaiah frowned slightly. "Or maybe nothing at all. Horses can be unpredictable creatures, responding to things we humans never notice." Mrs. Patterson arrived then with two other boarders, the banker Mr. Whitmore and a traveling salesman named Mr. Hodges, who would be moving on in the morning. The conversation during supper ranged across various topics, from the upcoming harvest festival to the territorial governor's latest proclamations. But Isabella found herself most interested in learning about Isaiah. He had come to Monticello from Wyoming Territory, she learned, where he had worked as a ranch hand since he was 16. He was now 26, and he had saved every penny of his wages for 10 years to buy his own place. The McAllister Ranch had been available because old Mr. McAllister had died without heirs, and while it needed work, it had good water rights and decent grazing land. It's hard work, Isaiah admitted, accepting a second helping of Mrs. Patterson's excellent roast beef. The house was barely standing when I arrived and the fences were mostly fallen. But the land is good, and I've got 300 head of cattle now. In a few more years, if I can keep building the herd and the prices stay decent, I'll have something real. That's admirable, Isabella said, meaning it. You must be very dedicated to have saved for so long and to work so hard now. A man needs something to work toward, Isaiah replied, and when his eyes met hers, she felt that strange breathlessness again. Something to build a future around. After supper, Isaiah offered to walk Isabella around the small garden behind the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson agreed with a knowing look that made Isabella blush, but she accepted Isaiah's arm and stepped out into the cooling evening air. The garden was Mrs. Patterson's pride, full of late summer flowers and herbs that perfumed the air. Isaiah and Isabella walked slowly along the narrow paths, and for a while they said nothing, simply enjoying the peaceful moment. Finally, Isaiah spoke. I hope I'm not being too forward, Isabella, but I'd like to see you again, not because of the rescue, but because I find myself wanting to know you better. He stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. If that's presumptuous of me, please say so. Isabella's heart hammered in her chest. It's not presumptuous. I would like that very much. The Harvest Festival is this Saturday. Would you do me the honor of attending with me? Yes. The answer came without hesitation, and Isaiah's face lit with a smile that made her feel as if she was the one who had performed some great feat. Then I'll call for you at 2 o'clock, if that suits Mrs. Patterson. I'm sure it will suit her perfectly. They walked a bit longer, talking easily now, and Isabella learned that Isaiah loved to read when he had time, that he had a younger sister married and settled in Colorado, and that his parents had died when he was 15, which was why he had started working so young. In turn, she told him about her family's farm in Missouri, about her 3 brothers and her decision to become a teacher, about her love of books and her complete inability to carry a tune. I can't believe that, Isaiah protested. You have such a musical voice when you speak. Speaking and singing are 2 very different things. My mother used to say I could make angels weep, and not in a good way. Isabella laughed at the memory. It's one of the reasons I became a teacher instead of hoping for a husband. Most men want a wife who can sing at church and social gatherings. Then most men are fools. Isaiah's voice was firm. A woman's worth isn't measured by whether she can carry a tune. It's measured by her character, her kindness, her intelligence. And from what I've seen today, Isabella, you have those qualities in abundance. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes, moved by the sincerity in his words. That's very kind of you to say. It's not kindness, it's truth. Isaiah reached out and gently took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I know we've only just met, but I feel as if I've been waiting to meet you. Does that sound strange? No. Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. I feel it too. They stood there in the gathering dusk, hands clasped, while fireflies began to blink among the flowers and somewhere a mockingbird sang its evening song. Isabella had never felt so perfectly content, so absolutely certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be. When Isaiah finally walked her back to the boarding house's front door, he lifted her hand to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and deeply romantic. "Until Saturday, Isabella." "Until Saturday, Isaiah." She watched him walk to his horse, mount up, and ride away into the twilight, one hand raised in farewell. Only when he had disappeared from view did she go inside, where Mrs. Patterson was waiting with barely contained curiosity. "Well," the older woman demanded, "what do you think of our local hero?" "I think," Isabella said slowly, a smile spreading across her face, "that I may have found something I wasn't even looking for." Mrs. Patterson laughed and patted her cheek. "That's always the way of it, dear. That's always the way." The days until Saturday seemed to stretch on forever, though Isabella had plenty to keep her busy. The schoolhouse needed organizing, lessons needed planning, and she had yet to meet all the families whose children would be in her care. She threw herself into the work with determination, but Isaiah was never far from her thoughts. On Thursday, she was arranging textbooks on shelves when she heard a knock at the schoolhouse door. She turned to find Isaiah standing in the doorway, hat in hand, looking uncertain. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "I had business in town and thought I'd stop by to see how you were settling in." Isabella's heart leaped. "Not interrupting at all. I'm just organizing supplies. Would you like to see the schoolhouse?" Isaiah stepped inside, his eyes taking in the neat rows of desks, the chalkboard, the maps on the walls. "This is wonderful. The children in Monticello are lucky to have a real school now and a real teacher. I hope I can live up to their expectations." Isabella set down the books she was holding. "I start teaching on Monday. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest. You'll do wonderfully, I can tell." Isaiah walked along the rows of desks, running his hand over the smooth wood. "I never had much schooling myself. My mother taught me to read and write, and I've educated myself as best I could since then, but I always wished I could have gone to a proper school." "It's never too late to learn," Isabella said impulsively. "If there's anything you'd like to study, I'd be happy to help." Isaiah turned to look at her, something unreadable in his blue eyes. "That's a generous offer." "Not generous, I'm a teacher. Teaching is what I do." Isabella moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "And I'd enjoy spending the time with you." "Then I accept." "Perhaps you could recommend some books. I read when I can, but my selection is limited." They spent the next hour talking about books, about history and literature and science. Isaiah had read more widely than Isabella had expected, educating himself through borrowed books and careful study. She found herself impressed by his intelligence and his curiosity about the world. When he finally left, promising to see her on Saturday, Isabella realized she had accomplished very little actual organizing. But she didn't care. Every moment with Isaiah felt precious, as if she was discovering something rare and valuable. Saturday dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the harvest festival. Isabella dressed carefully in her yellow cotton dress with the white trim, the one that had always been her favorite. Mrs. Patterson helped her pin up her hair, clucking approvingly at the result. "You look lovely, dear. That young man won't be able to take his eyes off you." "Mrs. Patterson." But Isabella was pleased nonetheless. Isaiah arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, looking handsome in clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his dark hair combed back. He offered his arm, and they walked together to the town square, where the festival was already in full swing. Monticello wasn't a large town, but it seemed as if everyone in the surrounding area had come for the celebration. There were tables laden with food, games for the children, a shooting competition, and a dance floor set up in the square where a fiddle band was already playing. The air smelled of roasting meat and fresh bread, and the particular dusty sweetness of late summer in Utah Territory. Isaiah guided Isabella through the crowd, introducing her to people she hadn't yet met. She was struck by how well-liked he seemed to be. People greeted him warmly, and several men clapped him on the shoulder and praised his quick action in saving the schoolteacher. Each time, Isaiah deflected the praise with quiet grace. They sampled the food, laughed at the children's three-legged race, and watched the shooting competition, where Isaiah placed third despite claiming he was out of practice. When the dancing began, he led Isabella onto the floor without hesitation. "I thought you might like to know," he said as they moved to the music, "that I checked on your mare. She's perfectly healthy, no signs of injury or illness. Whatever spooked her that day seems to have passed. That's good to hear, though I confess I've been nervous about riding since then." "That's understandable, but you shouldn't let fear keep you from something you enjoy. Next time you need to ride somewhere, I'll go with you. We'll take it slow, help you build your confidence again." Isabella felt warmth spread through her chest. "You do that, of course." Isaiah pulled her a little closer, and she could feel the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I'd like to spend more time with you, Isabella, as much time as you'll allow. I'd like that too." They danced 3 more dances, and with each one, Isabella felt herself falling deeper under Isaiah's spell. He was attentive without being overbearing, strong without being intimidating, intelligent without being arrogant. He made her laugh with his dry observations about the townspeople, and he listened with genuine interest when she talked about her hopes for the school. As evening approached and the festival began to wind down, Isaiah walked Isabella back to the boarding house. They took the long way, neither wanting the day to end. When they finally reached her door, Isaiah took both her hands in his. "I had a wonderful time today, Isabella." "So did I." She looked up at him, at those remarkable blue eyes that seemed to see right into her soul. "Thank you for asking me. Would you like to go riding with me tomorrow, after church perhaps? I'd like to show you my ranch if you're interested." "I'd love that." Isabella squeezed his hands. "I'll be ready whenever you arrive." Isaiah lifted her hands to his lips, kissing first one and then the other, and Isabella felt heat bloom in her cheeks. "Good night, Isabella." "Good night, Isaiah." She watched him leave, then went inside where Mrs. Patterson was waiting with tea and questions. Isabella answered them all happily, reliving every moment of the perfect day. Sunday morning, Isabella sat through the church service barely hearing a word the preacher said. She was too busy watching Isaiah from across the aisle, catching his eye and sharing secret smiles. After the service, several townspeople approached her to talk about the school, to introduce their children, to welcome her properly to Monticello. Isabella did her best to be gracious and attentive, but part of her attention was always on Isaiah, who was dealing with his own round of conversations. Finally, they managed to extract themselves from the crowd. Isaiah had brought his horse and borrowed a gentle mare for Isabella, and he helped her mount with steady hands. "This is Daisy," he said, patting the mare's neck. "She's the calmest horse I know. She'll take good care of you." True to Isaiah's words, Daisy proved to be completely docile, following his horse with no need for guidance. They rode out of town at an easy pace, and Isabella felt her nervousness gradually fade. The day was beautiful, warm but not hot, with a breeze that carried the scent of sage and juniper. The ranch was about 5 miles from town, nestled in a valley with red rock cliffs rising on one side and grassland stretching away on the other. As they approached, Isabella could see the house Isaiah had mentioned, a simple wooden structure that looked sturdy and well-maintained despite its obvious age. There was a barn, several corrals, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing. "It's beautiful," Isabella said as they dismounted. "You can see for miles. That's one of the things I loved about it when I first saw the place." Isaiah's pride in his property was evident in his voice. "The house needs work still, but the bones are good. Come, I'll show you around." He led her first to the barn, where his horses whickered in greeting. He introduced her to each one by name, explaining their personalities and quirks with obvious affection. Then they walked out to look at the cattle, and Isaiah told her about his plans for expanding the herd, for improving the grazing land, for eventually adding more buildings. "I want to build a bigger house someday," he said, gazing out over the land. "One with proper bedrooms and a real kitchen. Maybe a porch where you could sit and watch the sunset." "That sounds lovely," Isabella said softly. Isaiah turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Isabella, I know we haven't known each other long, less than a week in fact, but I need you to know something. When I saw you in danger on that runaway horse, when I caught you and held you safe, something changed in me. It was like I'd been waiting my whole life for that moment for you. I know that probably sounds insane." "No." Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. "It doesn't sound insane at all. I'm not a rich man. This ranch is everything I have, and it'll be years before it's truly profitable. But I'm hardworking and I'm honest, and I would do everything in my power to make you happy." Isaiah took her hands, his grip firm and warm. "I'm falling in love with you, Isabella. I think I started falling the moment you called me your guardian angel." Tears blurred Isabella's vision. "I'm falling in love with you too. I didn't come to Monticello looking for this, but now that I've found you, I can't imagine my life without you in it." Isaiah cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." The word was barely out of her mouth before his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but it quickly deepened as Isabella wrapped her arms around Isaiah's neck and pressed closer. She had been kissed before, but never like this, never with such tenderness and passion combined. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella rested her forehead against Isaiah's chest and felt his heart pounding as hard as her own. "I want to marry you," Isaiah said into her hair. "I know it's too soon to ask, but I want you to know my intentions. I'm courting you with marriage in mind if you'll have me." Isabella pulled back to look up at him. "I will have you, and it's not too soon. When something is right, you know it." They stood there holding each other for a long moment, and Isabella felt a peace settle over her that she had never experienced before. This was right. This was what she had been meant to find when she left Missouri. Isaiah made them lunch in his small kitchen, and they ate sitting on the front step of his house, talking about everything and nothing. He told her stories about his time working on ranches in Wyoming, about learning to break horses and rope cattle, about winters so harsh he thought he might freeze to death. She told him about growing up on her family's farm, about her mother's herb garden and her father's stubborn insistence on doing things the old way, about her decision to become a teacher despite her father's belief that women belonged at home. "You think he'll approve of me?" Isaiah asked. "Your father, I mean, when we tell your family about us." "I don't know," Isabella admitted. "He wanted me to marry the neighbor's son, consolidate the farms. He wasn't happy when I refused and came out here instead. But I think when he meets you, when he sees how much we love each other, he'll understand. I hope so. Family is important." Isaiah squeezed her hand. "I lost mine too young. I wouldn't want to be the reason you lose yours. You won't be. And if my father can't accept my choices, then that's his loss, not mine." Isabella's voice was firm. I'm a grown woman, Isaiah. I make my own decisions. Pride shone in Isaiah's eyes. That's one of the many things I love about you, your strength, your independence. You're not afraid to go after what you want. The afternoon passed too quickly, and eventually Isaiah had to take Isabella back to town. She had lessons to prepare for her first day of teaching, and he had evening chores to complete. But they rode slowly, neither wanting to rush, and when they reached the boarding house, Isaiah helped her down and held her close for a long moment. "Tomorrow after school, may I call on you?" he asked. "Every day after school, if you'd like," Isabella replied. "Though I know you have work on the ranch, I'll make time. You're more important than any work." Isaiah kissed her again, a sweet kiss full of promise. "Sleep well, Isabella. Dream of me. Always," she whispered. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Isabella threw herself into teaching, and she loved it. The children of Monticello were eager to learn, their parents supportive and grateful to have a real school in town. She taught reading and writing, arithmetic and geography, and she watched with satisfaction as her students made progress. Every afternoon when school ended, Isaiah would be waiting. Sometimes they would walk around town, talking to neighbors and shopkeepers. Sometimes they would ride out to his ranch, where Isabella would help with small tasks while he did his chores. Sometimes they would simply sit in Mrs. Patterson's garden and read together, sharing books and observations. The town quickly accepted them as a couple. Mrs. Patterson beamed with pride at having facilitated the match. The other townspeople smiled when they saw Isaiah and Isabella together, and more than one person commented that they had never seen Isaiah look so happy. Isabella wrote to her family, telling them about Isaiah, about her teaching, about her new life in Utah Territory. Her mother wrote back quickly, full of warmth and encouragement. Her father's response was cooler, but he didn't forbid the relationship, which Isabella took as a positive sign. One evening in October, as they sat together watching the sunset from the front step of Isaiah's house, he turned to her with serious eyes. "Isabella, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." Isabella set down the book she had been reading and gave him her full attention. "Are you truly happy here? With me, with this life? I know it's not what you probably imagined when you became a teacher. This is rough country, and ranch life is hard. I don't want you to wake up one day and regret choosing me." Isabella took his face in her hands, making sure he was looking directly at her. "Isaiah Irving, I have never been happier in my entire life. Yes, this is rough country, and yes, ranch life is hard. But I'm with you, and that makes everything worthwhile. I don't regret choosing you. I will never regret choosing you." Relief flooded Isaiah's face. "I had to be sure. I love you so much, Isabella. Sometimes it frightens me how much I love you. I know. I feel the same way." Isabella kissed him softly. "But we don't have to be frightened. We have each other." Isaiah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Then I have something for you." Isabella's heart began to race as Isaiah opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond. It wasn't elaborate or expensive, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. "Isabella Jennings, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I know we should probably wait longer, that people will say we're rushing, but I don't want to wait. I want to start our life together. Will you marry me?" "Yes." Isabella threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Isaiah slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold as if the world itself was celebrating their happiness. They set the wedding date for the first Saturday in November, just a month away. It wasn't much time to prepare, but neither of them wanted to wait longer than necessary. Mrs. Patterson threw herself into helping with the arrangements, enlisting the aid of several other townswomen. The church would host the ceremony, and there would be a celebration afterward at the boarding house. Isabella wrote to her family, hoping her parents might be able to make the journey for the wedding. Her mother wrote back immediately, thrilled at the news and promising to come despite the distance. Her father remained silent, and Isabella tried not to let it hurt. The days flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. Isabella continued teaching, not wanting to abandon her students, though she knew that once she married, her duties would shift to helping Isaiah with the ranch. She and Isaiah spent every free moment together, planning their future, talking about the children they hoped to have, about the improvements they would make to the ranch, about growing old together. One afternoon, about 2 weeks before the wedding, Isaiah came to meet Isabella after school looking troubled. She knew immediately that something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, taking his hand. "There's been some trouble on the ranch. Someone cut my fences and scattered my cattle. It took me all night and most of today to round them up and repair the damage." Isabella's stomach clenched. Who would do such a thing? I don't know. Could have been anyone, or it could have been an accident, but the cuts looked deliberate to me. Isaiah rubbed his face tiredly. "I hate to do this, Isabella, but I need to spend the next few days on the ranch, keeping watch. I won't be able to come into town. Then I'll come to you." The words were out before Isabella had fully thought them through, but once she said them, she knew they were right. "I can stay with you, help you watch." "Isabella, I can't ask you to do that. It wouldn't be proper and it could be dangerous if someone really is trying to cause trouble." "You're not asking. I'm offering, and we're getting married in 2 weeks. What's propriety compared to helping the man I love?" Isabella squeezed his hand. "Besides, I can handle a rifle. My father made sure all his children knew how to shoot." Isaiah looked torn. "Are you certain? Mrs. Patterson will have both our heads. Let me worry about Mrs. Patterson. You worry about your ranch." In the end, Isaiah agreed, though he insisted on proper arrangements. Isabella would sleep in the house while he kept watch outside. Mrs. Patterson was scandalized but agreed when Isabella pointed out that the wedding was so close anyway, and that Isaiah needed help. That evening, Isabella rode out to the ranch with Isaiah, a bag of supplies packed and a rifle across her saddle. The sun was setting as they arrived, painting the red cliffs in shades of crimson and shadow. Isaiah showed her where everything was in the house, then insisted she bolt the door behind him when he went out to begin his watch. Isabella didn't sleep much that night. She lay in Isaiah's bed, in the house that would soon be her home, and listened to the sounds of the night. Every creak made her tense. Every distant animal cry brought her fully awake. But the night passed without incident, and when dawn broke, she made coffee and breakfast for Isaiah, who came in looking exhausted. "Anything?" she asked. "Nothing. Maybe it was just a one-time thing." But Isaiah didn't look convinced. They spent the day together, Isaiah doing necessary chores while Isabella kept watch. She found herself enjoying the ranch work more than she had expected. There was something satisfying about the physical labor, about seeing immediate results from her efforts. That night passed peacefully as well, and the next. On the 4th night, Isaiah was beginning to relax, thinking perhaps the fence cutting had indeed been random. But Isabella, sitting by the window in the pre-dawn darkness, saw movement near the barn. She grabbed the rifle and stepped outside as quietly as she could. In the growing light, she could make out a figure tampering with the corral fence. Her heart pounding, she raised the rifle and called out, "Step away from that fence and put your hands up." The figure spun around, and Isabella recognized him immediately. It was Tom Brewer, a local ranch hand she had met briefly in town. He had seemed friendly enough then, but now his face was twisted with anger. "Well, if it isn't the school teacher," Tom sneered, "playing at being a rancher's wife." "I said put your hands up." Isabella kept the rifle steady despite her shaking hands. Tom took a step toward her. "You going to shoot me, teacher? I don't think you have it in you. Try me." Isabella's voice was cold. "Isaiah, get out here." Isaiah came running from where he had been checking the far pasture. When he saw the situation, his expression turned thunderous. "Brewer, I should have known. You don't belong here, Irving," Tom spat. "You're an outsider. That ranch should have gone to someone local." "The ranch was sold to the highest bidder. I paid fair price for it." Isaiah positioned himself protectively in front of Isabella, though she kept her rifle trained on Tom. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you don't deserve any of it. You come in here with your money saved up, buy the best ranch in the area, and then you get the prettiest girl too. It's not right." Isabella felt a chill run through her. This wasn't just about the ranch. This was about her too. "Isabella is not a prize to be won," Isaiah said, his voice dangerously quiet. "She's a person who makes her own choices, and she chose me. Only because you played hero saving her from that horse." Tom's face was red with rage now. "I could have saved her just as well if I'd been there." "But you weren't," Isabella said firmly. "Isaiah was. And even if he hadn't been, even if we'd met some other way, I would have chosen him. Because he's a good man, Tom. A kind man. And you, cutting his fences, trying to ruin him, you've shown you're neither of those things." Tom lunged toward them, but Isaiah was ready. He caught Tom's arm and twisted it behind his back in one smooth motion, forcing the other man to his knees. "We're going into town," Isaiah said grimly. "You're going to confess what you've done to the sheriff, and then you're going to leave Monticello. Because if I ever catch you on my property again, Isabella won't have to shoot you. I will." They marched Tom into town as the sun was rising, and he confessed everything to the sheriff. It turned out he had been behind several other incidents of vandalism around town, not just on Isaiah's ranch. The sheriff locked him up pending trial, and Isaiah and Isabella finally went back to the boarding house, exhausted but relieved. Mrs. Patterson fussed over them both, bringing food and hot water for washing, clucking about the danger they had been in. But Isabella could see the pride in her eyes too. "You're quite the shot, dear," Mrs. Patterson said. "Tom Brewer won't forget having a rifle pointed at him by the schoolteacher anytime soon." "I hope I never have to do that again," Isabella admitted. "I was terrified the entire time." "But you did it anyway," Isaiah said, pulling her close. "You were so brave, Isabella. When I saw you standing there with that rifle, protecting my property, protecting me, I fell in love with you all over again." "We protect each other," Isabella said simply. "That's what partners do." The final days before the wedding passed in a blur. Isabella's mother arrived, a warm, practical woman who took to Isaiah immediately. She brought news that Isabella's father had softened somewhat and sent his blessing, along with a generous check, as a wedding gift. It wasn't quite the same as his presents, but it was something, and Isabella chose to focus on the positive. The women of Monticello came together to create a beautiful wedding dress for Isabella, working late into the nights to finish it in time. It was simple but elegant, made of cream-colored silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. When Isabella tried it on the night before the wedding, she hardly recognized herself in the mirror. "You look beautiful," her mother said, tears in her eyes. "Your father is a fool for missing this." "He's stubborn," Isabella replied. "But he'll come around eventually. And if he doesn't, I have Isaiah and I have you, and I have all these wonderful people in Monticello who have become like family. That's enough." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. The small church was packed with townspeople, all eager to celebrate the union of their local hero and the beloved schoolteacher. Isaiah stood at the altar looking nervous and handsome in his best suit, his eyes fixed on the door as he waited for his bride. When Isabella appeared on her mother's arm, walking slowly down the aisle, Isaiah's face transformed with such joy that several women in the congregation pulled out handkerchiefs. Isabella felt tears prick her own eyes as she walked toward him, toward their future together. The ceremony was simple but moving. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and bad. When it came time for the vows, Isaiah took Isabella's hands and spoke with such sincerity that there wasn't a dry eye in the church. "Isabella, from the moment I caught you in my arms, I knew you were the one I'd been waiting for. You are my partner, my best friend, my home. I promise to love you, to protect you, to support your dreams and build new dreams with you. I promise to be worthy of the gift of your love for all the days of my life." Isabella's voice shook with emotion as she spoke her own vows. "Isaiah, you are my guardian angel, my safe harbor in any storm. You saw me not as I appeared, but as I truly am, and you loved me anyway. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to be your strength when you're weak, to be your partner in all things. I promise to love you with my whole heart for all of our days." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and invited Isaiah to kiss his bride, the church erupted in cheers. Isaiah kissed Isabella tenderly, and she felt joy surge through her so powerfully that she thought she might burst from it. The celebration afterward was everything they could have hoped for. Mrs. Patterson had outdone herself with the food, and the townspeople had brought their own contributions, until the tables groaned with the weight of it all. There was music and dancing, toasts and laughter, and through it all, Isaiah and Isabella never let go of each other's hands. As evening approached and the celebration began to wind down, Isaiah and Isabella slipped away to begin the ride out to their ranch, to their home. Their friends and neighbors called out good wishes and threw rice, laughing and celebrating even as the newlyweds departed. The ride through the gathering dusk was peaceful, both of them content to be alone together at last. When they reached the ranch house, Isaiah dismounted first and then reached up to lift Isabella down. Instead of setting her on her feet, he swept her into his arms. "What are you doing?" Isabella laughed. "Carrying my bride over the threshold," Isaiah said, grinning. "It's tradition." He carried her into the house, which someone, probably several someones, had cleaned and decorated with wildflowers while they were at the wedding. There were fresh linens on the bed, food in the kitchen, and lamps already lit throughout the house. Isaiah set Isabella down gently, and for a moment they just looked at each other, the reality of being married, of being alone together, settling over them. "Hello, Mrs. Irving," Isaiah said softly. "Hello, Mr. Irving." Isabella reached up to cup his face. "Take me to bed, husband." Isaiah needed no further invitation. He kissed her deeply, and Isabella felt heat bloom through her entire body. They moved together to the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, learning each other with hands and lips and whispered words of love. Their coming together was tender and passionate, awkward and perfect, everything a wedding night should be. Afterwards, they lay tangled in each other's arms, Isabella's head on Isaiah's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to a steady rhythm. "I love you," Isaiah murmured into her hair. "More than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." "I love you too," Isabella replied, pressing a kiss to his bare chest. "And I can't wait to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." They fell asleep wrapped in each other, content and complete. The months that followed were a time of adjustment and growth. Isabella continued teaching. though she cut her hours back to part-time so she could help more with the ranch. Isaiah taught her everything he knew about ranching, and she proved to be an apt student. Together they worked to improve the property, fixing up the house bit by bit, expanding the herd, building their future. Winter came early that year, and it was harsh. There were days when the snow fell so thick and fast that they couldn't see past the front porch, days when even getting to the barn to care for the animals was a trial. But they faced it together, and somehow that made even the hardest days bearable. In the spring, Isabella discovered she was pregnant. She told Isaiah one evening after supper, and he stared at her in wonder for a long moment before sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around, both of them laughing with joy. "We're going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "We're going to be parents." "Yes," Isabella confirmed, laughing through happy tears. "In about 6 months, if my calculations are correct." Isaiah's joy was infectious. He became even more protective of Isabella, insisting she rest more, that she not overwork herself. She found it endearing if occasionally frustrating, but she knew it came from love, so she bore his fussing with good humor. As her belly grew, so did their excitement. They spent evenings planning, discussing names, preparing a corner of their bedroom to serve as a nursery. Isaiah built a beautiful cradle from wood he had been saving, carving it with intricate designs of horses and cattle and the red cliffs that surrounded their ranch. Isabella's mother came to visit in the late summer, arriving a month before the baby was due. She was a calming presence, helping Isabella prepare and easing both their nerves about the upcoming birth. "You're going to be wonderful parents," she assured them. "And this little one is lucky to have you both." The baby came on a warm September evening, just as the sun was setting over the red cliffs. The birth was long and difficult, but Isabella was strong, and when she finally heard her baby's first cry, all the pain was forgotten in the rush of overwhelming love. "It's a boy," the midwife announced, placing the squalling infant on Isabella's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Isabella looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect features and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in ways she never knew possible. Isaiah, who had been holding her hand through the whole ordeal, was crying unashamedly as he gazed at his child. "He's perfect," Isaiah whispered, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. "He's absolutely perfect." They named him Isaac James Irving, a name that honored Isaiah's father while standing on its own. Little Isaac was an easy baby, content and rarely fussy, with his father's blue eyes and his mother's smile. Watching Isaiah with their son filled Isabella with even deeper love for her husband. He was a natural father, gentle and patient, singing soft songs to Isaac when he was fussy, walking the floor with him when he couldn't sleep, gazing at him with such wonder that it brought tears to Isabella's eyes. The first year of Isaac's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and precious moments. Isabella returned to teaching part-time when Isaac was 6 months old, leaving him with Mrs. Patterson during school hours. The older woman doted on the baby, and Isaac thrived under all the love and attention. The ranch continued to prosper. Isaiah's hard work and careful planning paid off, and they were able to make more improvements to the house and property. By Isaac's second birthday, they had added 2 more rooms to the house and expanded the cattle operation significantly. On the evening of their 3rd wedding anniversary, Isabella stood on the porch watching Isaiah play with Isaac in the yard. Their son was running on sturdy legs now, chasing after his father with peals of laughter. The sun was setting, painting everything in golden light, and Isabella felt such contentment that it brought tears to her eyes. Isaiah looked up and caught her watching. He scooped Isaac into his arms and walked over to the porch, both of them grinning at her. "What are you thinking about?" Isaiah asked, climbing the steps to stand beside her. "About how far we've come," Isabella said, reaching out to ruffle Isaac's hair. "3 years ago, I was just the new schoolteacher in town. I had no idea that my life was about to change completely." "All because of a runaway horse," Isaiah said, smiling. "All because of a brave cowboy who saved me." Isabella leaned in to kiss him. "My guardian angel." "I'm no angel," Isaiah protested. "Just a man who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "Maybe," Isabella conceded. "But you're my man, and I thank God every day that you were there that afternoon." Isaac squirmed to be let down, and they watched as he toddled off to chase a butterfly. Isaiah put his arm around Isabella's waist, pulling her close. "I have something to tell you," Isabella said, resting her head on his shoulder. "What's that?" "I'm pregnant again." Isaiah went still, then turned to look at her with wide eyes. "Really? You're sure?" "I'm sure. Isaac is going to be a big brother next spring." Isaiah let out a whoop of joy that startled Isaac into turning around and looking at his parents with confusion. Then Isaiah was kissing Isabella, lifting her off her feet, laughing with pure happiness. "Another baby," he said when he finally set her down. "Isabella, you've made me the happiest man alive." That winter was easier than the first one had been, with a bigger house and more experience behind them. Isabella continued teaching through her pregnancy, stopping only in the final weeks before the baby was due. Isaac was an excited soon-to-be big brother, though he didn't fully understand what was coming. The second baby, a girl they named Amelia Rose, arrived on a chilly March morning. She had Isabella's brown hair and a determined cry that suggested she would be a force to be reckoned with. Isaac was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to help with everything, and Isaiah was once again overwhelmed with love for his growing family. "2 children," he said in wonder, holding Amelia while Isaac leaned against his knee. "We're truly blessed, Isabella." "We are," she agreed, looking at her family with a full heart. The years continued to pass in a steady rhythm of joy and hard work. Isaac grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved helping his father on the ranch. Amelia proved to be as spirited as her first cry had suggested, fearless and determined in everything she did. 2 years after Amelia's birth, another son arrived, whom they named Thomas. He was quieter than his siblings, but with a quick smile and a gentle nature. Isabella eventually stopped teaching to focus on raising their children and helping with the ranch full-time. She missed teaching sometimes, but she loved being a mother more than she could have imagined. Besides, she taught her own children their letters and numbers, and sometimes the neighboring children would come over for informal lessons. Isaiah's ranch became one of the most successful in the region. His reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread, and they were able to build the bigger house he had once dreamed of, complete with a wide porch where they could sit and watch the sunset. Through it all, their love for each other only deepened. They faced challenges, as all couples do. There were hard years when the weather was bad or cattle prices dropped. There were illnesses and injuries, scares with the children, disagreements about how to run the ranch. But they faced everything together, and somehow they always emerged stronger. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaiah organized a surprise celebration at the ranch. It seemed as if half of Monticello turned out, bringing food and music and well wishes. Mrs. Patterson, now gray-haired but still sharp as ever, presided over the festivities with pride. "I knew from the moment I saw you two together that you were meant for each other," she declared, hugging both Isaiah and Isabella. "And I was right. Just look at this beautiful family you've built." Later that evening, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, Isaiah and Isabella sat on their porch in the gathering darkness. They were older now, Isaiah's dark hair touched with gray at the temples, Isabella's face lined with the gentle marks of laughter and sun. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people who had fallen in love 10 years ago. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Isaiah asked, taking Isabella's hand. "When I pulled you off that runaway horse." "I called you my guardian angel," Isabella replied, smiling at the memory. "You were right, you know, but not in the way you thought." Isaiah lifted her hand to his lips. "You were my guardian angel too. You saved me from a life half lived, from loneliness, from not knowing what real happiness was. You gave me a family, a home in every sense of the word. You saved me, Isabella." Isabella felt tears slip down her cheeks. "We saved each other." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear the soft sounds of their children sleeping, the ticking of the clock Isaiah's sister had sent them as a wedding gift, all the small sounds that made up their life together. "I love you," Isabella said softly. "Now and always." "Now and always," Isaiah echoed, and they sat together in the peaceful evening, content in the life they had built and the love they shared. The years continued to flow by like a gentle river. Isaac grew into a young man much like his father, steady and hardworking with a natural way with horses. When he was 19, he married the daughter of a neighboring rancher, and Isaiah gifted them a portion of land to start their own place. Amelia shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to become a doctor, and with Isabella's full support and Isaiah's proud tears, she left for medical school in Denver. Thomas, true to his gentle nature, became a teacher, taking over the Monticello school when the previous teacher retired. Through it all, Isaiah and Isabella remained the center of their growing family. They became grandparents when Isaac's wife gave birth to twin girls, and they fell in love all over again with the tiny babies who bore their features. On a warm afternoon in their 35th year of marriage, Isabella and Isaiah sat on their porch as they had countless times before. They were older now, their hair mostly gray, their bodies moving more slowly than they once had. But their hands were still clasped together, and their love was as strong as ever. "You ever think about that day?" Isabella asked, watching the sunset paint the red cliffs in shades of gold. "The day we met, all the time," Isaiah admitted. "I think about how everything in my life led to that exact moment. Every choice I made, every hardship I endured, all of it brought me to the right place at the right time to catch you. I used to be embarrassed about calling you my guardian angel," Isabella said with a smile. "It seemed so dramatic, so impulsive, but I was right. You were my guardian angel, you still are. And you're mine." Isaiah squeezed her hand. "You've given me a life beyond anything I could have imagined. A family, a home, love that never wavers. I'm the luckiest man who ever lived." "We're both lucky," Isabella corrected. "Lucky to have found each other, lucky to have built this life together. I wouldn't change a single thing." As the sun set and darkness crept across the land, they remained on the porch, holding hands, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last forever. The runaway horse, the dramatic rescue, the instant connection, it had all seemed like something from a storybook. But it had been real, and it had led to a life more beautiful than any story. Inside the house, their children and grandchildren moved about, preparing supper, telling stories, living lives filled with the love that Isaiah and Isabella had modeled for them. Outside, the ranch that Isaiah had built with his own hands stretched out around them, a testament to hard work and dedication. But the greatest testament of all was the two people sitting on the porch, fingers intertwined, hearts beating in rhythm, still as in love as they had been that first day 35 years ago when a cowboy saved a woman from a runaway horse, and she called him her guardian angel. They had saved each other in every way that mattered, and they would continue to save each other, to love each other, until their last breath. The stars emerged one by one, just as they had on countless nights before, and Isaiah and Isabella watched them together, grateful for every moment, every challenge, every joy they had shared. Their love story had begun with a moment of danger and rescue, but it had grown into something far more profound. A partnership, a friendship, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. And as the night settled around them, soft and peaceful, they knew with absolute certainty that they had found what so many people search for but few ever find: true, lasting, unconditional love. From that first dramatic meeting to this quiet evening in their later years, their love had been the constant, the foundation upon which everything else was built. It was a love story for the ages, begun in the Wild West between a cowboy and a schoolteacher, sustained through decades of hard work and devotion, and destined to inspire their children and grandchildren for generations to come. And if anyone asked them the secret to their happiness, they would simply smile at each other and say what they had always known: when you find your guardian angel, you hold on tight and never let go.